Aron's generally on until he's not, and then he pulls out the map and figures out where he's at, and then from there we hike.
Yeah. And it's not really lost. You're really just misplaced. We get to the lake, and it was literally, I don't know if heaven's the right word, but it was nice. It was unbelievable, right? And honestly, what made this trip was the Pistol Pete. If I wouldn't have had that piece of fishing tackle, dude, I crushed it on Saturday or Friday. As far as awards go, I think Amy had the biggest fish.
Yeah, she had a big old cut bow. That thing was just boom.
Okay, she was pumped. She was using the F word. She was pumped.
I could hear from across the lake.
People asked a lot about how we cook the fish or how I've cooked the fish. Reading terrain, right? Reading when to cut right, when to cut left, why,
Right.
I can hear a creek on the right. I'm going to assume the creek on the right has an animal path, right?
Right.
But I can hear a death-defying, we're all going to die waterfall on the left. So,
boom, we are set.
Is this like Joe Rogan's podcast?
Exactly.
We are live. And this
we are live.
podcast is brought to you by tortillas and Spam. Are we ready?
Hey, Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
It looks
are we
like
in
your
focus?
wiener's sticking up, doesn't it, Wayne?
Do you have a boner?
What's that?
It's
That's
those pants, man.
That just comes from being a man.
They tend.
I don't know, because mine can be like a short stack of buttons, and those pants still make your wiener look big. Katie gonna edit this? Sorry, Katie.
They look buff.
What?
Sweet. Ready to rock and roll?
What are we discussing?
We're moving forward whether you're ready or not.
It's a backpacking trip.
I'm sick of your crap, Frank.
This is gonna get me late.
You got nothing?
Sorry, Katie. I'm just kidding.
That's right.
So you got to get the
We
mic
were gonna talk
close
about
to
something
your
I
face.
liked, which was coyote hunting.
We were.
And then you're like, oh, it, I'm just gonna put this guy with the mullet in.
It'd fit better maybe if you slide these suckers up like that, since that's. I mean, I don't think your head's that big.
That was kind of racist. Is it because I'm brown? I have a smaller brain.
Well,
I don't know how that works. Are you good at picking strawberries? You got to turn on the TortLife charm for sure.
yeah, no pressure either, Frank. I mean, don't feel like you have to be a dancing monkey, but we do want to see you perform.
And we'll lead you into happiness and greatness. Just
You're
lead
looking so
that if you like.
tan.
Dude, I got burnt as I mean, f***ing fried. Like, it's red right here and then white. We'll talk about that as well on the podcast. Oh, Lord.
I'm
got
used
the
to you
year-long
being more
tan.
pale.
I'm like a little ashy, actually.
Did Frank
What the
burn?
hell? Not really.
No,
No,
he's
I
brown,
don't-
man.
I don't burn. Not usually.
All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Bowmen podcast. We are at Kifaru headquarters, world headquarters. How do you like that, Frank? World
I love it.
headquarters.
Frank is in charge of the World Headquarters customer service.
Yes. We have on the podcast with us today, I got Aron Snyder, and we have Frank the Tank.
Peralta. TortLife.
TortLife. Frank, you've been like the magic man behind the scenes. There's a lot of people who actually know who you are, I think, that listen
really?
to this podcast, that greatly value and appreciate your
Did they actually get their stuff? Because they certainly don't get it from me.
More of a facilitator, I guess.
So what we don't want today is for you to choke on the podcast. Don't, pretend like there's not a camera there. No one's watching.
I'm going to let you know now if you cross your legs. I've already accepted I'm going to get made fun of. But
Like the gay way, like
well, I got made fun of for that too. And you're not supposed to say the G word.
Oh. or
I found
probably.
people from Ontario and California get sensitive about that. Tony Mudd, I think when I did that, I crossed the line.
Yeah.
That's
But he's like the ultimate man. He's like jacked, kills grizzlies with spears, and
Tony
killed
is
a
pretty jacked.
musk ox. He choked one out in Alaska or something.
I think he did something. I don't know, but he is buff. I think he's 50.
yeah, he's an
He's
older
pretty-
dude, man.
He's pretty shredded for 50.
Mhm. Hell
Yeah.
killing machine.
I couldn't say a whole lot when he made the leg crossing comment because it is.
Do you say that in the podcast?
No, you can't.
No, that'll
Katie will
probably
have
be-
to edit it out.
Edited a
Sorry.
little bit.
Yeah, I love you, Katie.
Sorry, Katie.
In a sisterly way.
Aaron, we're at Kifaru, which
Right.
I appreciate the hospitality that's always shown here when I come.
Oh, yes. In fact, Dwayne may need to get the door as we're talking about hospitality. Thank you, Dwayne. Yeah, no, it's we always like having you here, of course, and it's good humor. And, of course, and Dwayne gets the door for people. It's great. I'd like to bring up the fact that this podcast is brought to you by our fine sponsors, Mountain Ops, Sitka, Kifaru. This is the glow-in-the-dark Nalgene bottle. Crispy, and a bunch of other sponsors. And if you don't like that, then screw you. Oh, and Vortex Optics, because Frank's wearing the hat. No, the amount of whatever flack we get for some of that stuff makes me laugh. But yeah, we're going to talk about the backpacking, fishing, post-holing, lake froze over fishing trip.
Yeah, because you guys, while I was in PA at the Total Archery Challenge, Pennsylvania, at Seven Springs, you two gentlemen, fine specimens, you basically went on a
nature walk.
A nature walk.
Yeah, and Frank was definitely shaking up the earth a little bit on the way in, calling in the animals. Every now and then I'd look back and he'd be like, whoop, whoop, and he was shaking dirt up, throwing it out. Seemed to work. Yeah,
I was
Frank,
looking for that Sam Squatch or whatever they call it.
he was looking for a wood knocker. I'd look back and he was knocking on trees. I'm like, what are you doing, Frank? He's like, it's a wood knocker. But I'd never seen one of those animals. They're from Pueblo, right?
There's a lot of those in Pueblo. They're single and they have like 3 kids.
But yeah, I got a lot of comments from the I didn't initially anticipate to do a podcast on the trip, but I guess it makes sense because spring fishing is a big one for people. And then we did a lot of gear. Every time we go, we've got either a new piece of gear from Kifaru, one of our sponsors, or a company we don't deal with at all that wants us to try something. And it ended up a bit of a gong show, as it always does in the spring with spring runoff. Well, what's snow melt, what's frozen over. So yeah, we took and my girlfriend went. This was her. She kind of went varsity right out the gate. We went on a backpacking trip. You and I, Caitlin, Amy, and that was kind of like lower JV in the sense of not a lot of snow, and it was relatively flat. It wasn't bad. Good
not
break
a lot of incline, high elevation, but not elevation gain and loss.
So Amy went from sitting on the bench on a JV level to straight varsity playing in the NBA because we is it 3,000 feet of?
I would say, at least.
Yeah, about 3,000 feet of elevation gain, and
wow,
6 to 8 feet foot deep of snow.
Yeah,
that makes it a whole new ball game.
Yeah, like the first stretch was where the incline started, and we're like, this is all right. But once we got to the snow, that was kind of a game changer. Post-holing.
It got to the point where I thought I was going to have to get the map out, but Frank had a GPS because there was no trail because there was 6 feet of snow on the trail. I mean, it was. But yeah, we kind of generally what we do, we grab the map and we just start looking elevation in different lakes, and we just took a guess on what lake we might be able to get to, and then we assess gear-wise, which is me, usually Frank hanging out at the house, or me calling him of what we're going to bring. Are we going to bring a sawtooth? Are we going to bring? We brought Hilleberg's. What shelter? Pretty much we stick with just Kifaru and Hilleberg. Which Hilleberg, and why? And then once we figured out the lakes, and then what all the necessities, the small things, what tackle, that type of stuff. But we got all that kind of figured out. We ended up choosing Hilleberg's because of the snow. We didn't want to bring SST pins, the long snow stakes. We figured we'd just do dead man anchors for the tents,
Which is a rock tied to it, or what? Explain that.
It's a T. It's what I refer to as a dead man anchor, is where the stake point comes out. I extend that and then tee it off, and then I bury the stake or a stick into the snow, X amount deep, and then pack snow on top of that, and that becomes where my stake would go. That's what I refer to as a dead man anchor. You can rappel off of that in snow, and you'd be surprised what you can get away with.
I saw Bear Grylls do that.
Explain that to me again. I didn't.
So if you have a staking point, off of your
tent,
Kifaru, it just comes out, and normally the stake. This is the ground, and the stake comes in at an angle. Well, what you do is I dig deep into the snow a T, and then
Make a groove in the snow like a T?
Right. So the point comes out for the staking point to a T. That T is dug deep into the ground, and that's tied. Your guy out or tie out point is tied to that, so it's teed off in the snow, buried deep.
So and then you take like a stick and you stick it deep into the snow.
I did.
And you tie to that stick.
4 points that way with my shelter, and you tie to that stick.
And it'll hold in the snow like that.
You can rappel off of it.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can use it. Actually, I kind of, mostly from laziness, used the stakes as dead man anchors, which is the most lazy thing you can possibly do on the guy lines.
Right.
I literally dug it out with a stake, put it in the ground, and stomped on it real deep, and then piled snow on top. Now, I didn't have a freestanding shelter. Frank did. I had an Onion. That was a big question I had on my photos. I had an Onion GT. I don't know if I get made fun of by Petra. I never pronounce them correctly. Petra owns or runs the North American division for Hilleberg. The Onion, however it is, GT2. And Amy and I slept in that.
That's what I used with Caitlin.
Yeah, that's a tube tent, non-freestanding, dual wall, 3-season. If you get technical by one company that's out right now who kind of copied Hilleberg, it would be a 3.5-season tent. I have no idea what that even means, but it's a very durable 3-season tent. That's what I used. Frank actually had the correct shelter for the job. He had a Hilleberg Solo 4-season tent, and that's a one-man. Ours was a 2.
So when you pitched that tent, how deep was the snow that you were pitched on top of?
That'd have been 2, 3, 4 feet. We were on the
Wow.
on the bank of the lake. We might have been on the lake. I don't know.
I think we might have. Yeah, I think we were on the lake. The snow was deep enough to where at certain points I would say it was 8 to 12 feet.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Easily. And then other points, we had to look for grass to build a fire. Not that you can't build a fire on snow, but we found finally a patch with grass. Go ahead.
So for these T stakes that you dig into the snow, how deep do you need to go on something like that?
For this, without high wind and me being lazy, I only went like 6 inches deep. That's plenty. And honestly, the snow, it was so frozen because it was getting cold. I didn't go that deep.
So this isn't slush. This was pretty
firm. It was
firm.
harder than woodpecker lips. Yeah, it was.
Okay.
It was hard.
Which
was cool for the post holing effect because we didn't post hole that much going in where you fall, balls deep, and it's horrible. We did have, you about broke a kank.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sometimes when you're going downhill and there's a log, you'll slip right underneath the log with your leg. That's where it can get a little sketchy, but yeah.
Where's your snowshoes, Frank?
I don't own snowshoes. So.
I had some, but I gave them to a guy that we kicked off the island. We should go steal those back. But I gave that guy a lot of things, actually. You know what I might give him next is a black eye. But the thing that's a problem with this is snowshoes really aren't that.
They're probably not
You'd been pulling
completely
them
necessary. Yeah,
because we were in deadfall, so you would have had them on for 5 minutes or less,
and then take them off, put them on, take them off.
And the snow was hard packed enough. We weren't post holing that much, so it wasn't that bad. But yeah, so we go in. I don't know, roughly 4 miles ish, kind of cross country. For the last mile was sketchy. When I say sketchy, absolutely no trail, no tracks, no nothing. So you
downhill.
Nabbed your way in. And then got to the lake and it was frozen, basically. So no fishing would be done at that lake. I did cast out to the small section in the middle that was thawed, and then my bobber froze solid in the water, and I couldn't get it out. So I littered because it's stuck in the ice right now. So we tried, but then we put our collective brains together, built a fire, and got the map out and figured what lake we might get to in this area that wasn't frozen solid. We made the right choice and didn't have a trail crisscrossed across country. We did hit the trail a few times.
A couple times, yeah. Luckily, we came across that bridge. There was a huge creek, which was more like a river.
You would have died if you went in it. It was the spring melt. It
was cranking. Effect. Yeah, there was a waterfall not too far down, so it could have been a little sketchy.
Yeah, but we did. We found the footbridge by. He turned the GPS on, and I kind of, I wing it, right? I looked at the map, and I'm like, over here, and Frank was like, yeah, over there, and eventually we actually ran into the footbridge. But that was one of many crossings.
So would you say you were lost?
No. It's funny you bring the lost thing up. I'm going to cover that. So just from a non-biased third party, I saw the Gingers film, right? The video.
Yeah,
I turned it on pretty quick, and I didn't watch all of it. I just assumed you got lost. And so, and then Stubblefield was making a big deal out of you getting lost.
So for people who don't know,
how do you get lost in Pennsylvania is the question.
Well, because I wasn't lost.
Well, I'll do my perspective of this. Okay, initially, knowing Brian always has a GPS or two in his phone or whatever. Because as you said, you don't have the best sense of direction without those things.
No,
but I do know you're good with one. You know where to go. So I just thought you didn't have one and you got lost. And literally, when I say lost, in my opinion, with a group of people.
Because this was the Gritty hike in Pennsylvania, the Total Archery Challenge.
On the Gritty hike, if you're with a group of 10 to 15 other people, one person is never individually lost. You're all lost, right? You're all equally lost if you are lost, because every one of you are a grown man and you can say,
and there was like 90 of us.
Yeah, so come to find out from talking not just with you, with other people, is Stubblefield just talks too much shit, and he got probably tired. And you guys passed the turnaround point because everybody wanted to go farther.
Yeah, basically we were like, it's hard to get a workout in the PA
flatlands,
quote, unquote, mountains. So we went like 2 miles, and we're supposed to turn around there.
Yeah.
That's where I had seen the course with Sean DeGray the day before. I'm like, but I got there, and I'm like, I don't want to turn around. But going forward, I don't really know what else is out there. But I'm like, let's just keep going.
Yeah. But you guys had stuff, your phone and everything else, right?
Yeah, we all had, dude, everybody had a cell phone. There's a blinking dot that shows where you're at and where the lodge is, and it's like a half mile.
Yeah.
You know.
I just, I got a kick out of that because I have been lost, like stay out overnight lost. And it's not really lost. You're really just misplaced. You know the general direction to go. It's just easier to stay the night than try and hike out. Especially when you don't know the exact route. But so we were technically lost in that definition because we didn't know exactly where we were. We had an idea. We had a GPS. We had no idea where the trail was really.
Well, in Pennsylvania, it's like you can see where the lodge is and you can see where you are. But it's just like, do you want to bushwhack or do you want to keep hitting different roads, dirt roads and logging trails and so that's what you want to do.
Didn't bring the GPS.
Yeah,
I had a GPS apps.
We had GPS, and then a couple of guys had topos, and so we were kind of wandering around for exploring. It's not like we had this route all mapped out and we've hiked it like a bunch of times.
Yeah.
I've never been there before.
Speaking of that,
but that's kind of like how we go out and hike. You're not lost. You're on a mountain.
Yeah,
You know where the other side is. You just are trying to find the best route to it.
Yeah, last year scouting, Colton and I were supposed to meet up with Aron to set up trail cams and all kinds of stuff. But the week before, and I'm terrible at listening, as you guys already know. Aron had went over.
Poorly listening, he's not great. If you send in an email, he's good. But if you tell him, you better make sure he's looking at you in the eye.
I might not remember. It's more selective listening. So anyway, he goes over on the GPS. There's all these different settings you can put them on so that you can link up with somebody. So he thought he made sure that I had it set up that way, but we were going to meet up with him on a Saturday or something like that. So Colton and I go hiking in with these coordinates. And I had mine off on some different setting.
He did not have it on UTM. We did this in the podcast.
Right.
He had it on one of the other settings.
Right. That'll screw you up.
So anyway, it's just funny because me and Colton are going all over the mountain. Colton falls over and snaps his trekking pole in half and gets all pissy. And he's just like, screw it. I'm setting my tent up right here. I'm like, no, dude, we're going to find him. So we have this super crappy cell service. And I call Aron. He's like, where are you guys? I'm like, I don't know. We're on the creek. I'm like, should we walk up or walk down? He's like, I don't know. Walk down and see if you find us. And Colton's like, I'm setting my tent up here. I'm done. I'm done.
And then I could hear him yelling, Aron! And
probably blew out all the elk.
There wasn't many elk there the next day.
In the area.
So make sure your GPSs are all set up correctly. But we all stuck together. No one was lost.
But when you hike like that, like I've hunted with Aron now for a year, and Aron's more like that Daniel Boone quote, like, I'm never lost.
Yeah.
I've never been lost in my life, but I'll admit I've been confused for a day or so.
That is definitely just Derek O'Driscoll, who's a good buddy. I actually got to call him. I've been blowing him off. He has made jokes. I should write a book, The Adventures of Aaron Snyder. I've climbed 6 14ers on accident because I don't turn the GPS on. And we've been in places where it's an adventure. I don't look at the map because you know how I nav, right? Eventually, if I'm that screwed up, I'll turn the GPS on and I'll plot where I'm at out on the map, and I'll just say, "Oh, we need to go this way." It could be
if
2
you're
days.
That screwed up.
Yeah, it could be 2 days before I'm that screwed up, and I finally say, "Let's turn it on." But
I've gotten used to being just not lost, but I've gotten used to just never turning on a GPS. I didn't use one all last year.
Oh, really?
And I just kind of wandered around till that's okay. There's the water. There's the hill. Okay. Because that's how Aron does it. Only Aaron's generally on until he's not. And then he pulls out the map and figures out where he's at. And then from there we hike.
Yeah. And Amy's hiked with me enough where a couple times I start doing that look where I'm like, and she knows I'm about to pull out the map because it's the look of, I'm not in this. This shouldn't be here, or I shouldn't be there. But I got to get the map out because this doesn't look. Because I use a lot of train.
But I'm so in the past when you have a GPS, you're like you walk right to things, right up trails, right because you're exactly GPS is plotting you perfectly. Yeah. Well, that doesn't give you much of a woodsman's skill set when you don't have that electronic device in your hand.
Well, I think you were saying also it's like a perishable skill because. I know after that weekend he taught us like the whole ins and outs of it.
Well, I'll tell you what,
I forgot most of it.
I've gotten used to now wandering around and going, okay, that's not the right way. This way, nope, that wasn't it. I've gotten used to that because I've hung out with Aron so much, and I've gotten a lot better about finding my way through things over time. Yeah. And I don't worry about the time lost or or not know exactly where I'm at like I used to. Because Aron doesn't. We'll walk up a hill and then be like, oh, that wasn't the right spot, and we'll come back down and go across.
Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
That nobody does that anymore with the GPS. And you could tell, like on this hike, there's a couple of people that are like not used to.
If you have a map and the access of a global satellite positioning system to tell you where you're at, you are never lost. And this is one of the things that Amy and I talked about, and I wanted to cover in this. We had 2 guys coming to meet us, Corey, our customer service guy, and Mike, I have no idea how to pronounce the last name.
Muscatello. Yeah.
Muscatello.
Yeah.
Mike, 3 Musketeers. And we were talking about nav, right? If they could nav, they had a GPS, and she's worried about him. Amy's very caring, and I'm like, the only difference if they don't make it to us is they're camping in a spot that they didn't predetermine.
Big deal.
That's it. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, they're not going to die, honey. I'm like, they've got food. They got all the same they would have if they made it. They just didn't make it. And so they can camp where they stop, right, no matter what. And I think a lot of people that disconnect that they have everything to live, they panic, right? Mm-hmm. And I was explaining to her, like, I never worry minus life and limb injury because I know how to operate a GPS. I can do train association and common sense. If you have the gear on your back to stay alive, to go into the backcountry, no matter where you go, no matter how screwed up you get, you're going to be fine. You just camp in a spot you didn't want to. And that, which made, she got it after that. She's like, yeah, I didn't really think of that. And point in case, we did send them on a route that was quite horrible. Where we went was a long loop around, and Frank sent him a message on the Delorme of, hey, just shoot up the valley. Mm-hmm. Well, we should probably pull Corey in on this. It sounded like that was a straight sheer cliff with deadfall.
Yeah, we came down a similar route. It was super interesting.
Yeah, and
scree fields and all that stuff.
I was explaining to Amy about when we came back out because she was asking how, not that I did anything like Superman worthy, but reading terrain, right? Reading when to cut right, when to cut left, why, Right. I can hear a creek on the right. I'm going to assume the creek on the right has an animal path, right?
Right.
But I can hear a death-defying, we're all going to die waterfall on the left. So I'm thinking I'm going to skirt right, and I'll eventually hit some type of an animal trail that's going to follow that creek down. The creek being on the right being a normal-sounding creek, the one on the left being, what is that, a 200-foot drop?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Right. That's something that just comes from being in the woods a lot. Like in North Idaho, we both can do that well. Especially like in Alaska, you'll find these narrow ravines that have a creek running down it. But you don't want to go there because the blowdowns are over your head, tall, just choked. You want to walk out a ridge where the logs are actually, you can step over them.
Yep.
And so different terrain calls for you're looking for different features to try to find your way out.
Well, and you could tell, like, Corey could nav when I brought the map out. And he's like, hey, this looks like we should go this way. And I didn't end up going that way because I got lazy. And I went and hiked ahead down the cliff. And then we could make it, which did end up a bit sketchy. It was pretty steep, but we made it down. But you could tell he could read the terrain on the map perfectly of which way we could have gone. And it looked like, we didn't walk that way, but it looked like ahead would have been potentially easier.
I can remember hiking out of northeast or North Idaho with Aron. And after hunting for a long time, I don't like. Let's say we choose a route and it wasn't as good as the route we came in on. Mm-hmm. In fact, it sucks. It's
that
like
one did that one night.
That one night we came out, it was like, well, we won't go this way again. But you're in it. There's no sense in bitching about it. There's no sense in like, we made a mistake, right? You just climb over the logs. You just fight your way through and you get yourself out. And it is trying when you're with someone who is regretting that decision the whole time you're climbing down the mountain. Like, we should have gone the other way. We should have gone the other way. And they're hating life. It's like,
you
didn't go the other way.
Suck it up. Part of the fun's the adventure anyway. So.
I agree. Yeah.
So, that ends the relationship for me pretty much right there, which is one reason I get along well with you two. Like, you don't bitch, which is great. Because, there's a point where, yes, it does suck bad enough. Someone, the rain, snow, you're going to whine, right? Oh, man, the weather's horrible. But in the case of you're out in the woods, you're finding new terrain. You might find new area. And it's not like I haven't taken a right when I should have taken a left. I do it all the time. But it is fun. But that is, something that I'm glad we covered that talking about it. But either way, we had some severe creek crossing issues going to the next area, but we did find.
Did you have to take your pants off and go over?
No, we found some good logs.
Barefoot or anything?
I thought it was going to to that level.
Yeah, just about.
If
we had to cross that river, though, I don't know how that would have went. That thing was cranking, but
yeah,
the other creeks would have been manageable with.
You might be swimming.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, if you fall in and you're just going to get wet, that's one thing. That one, if you fell in, you're going
to get swept down away.
It would have been bad. Yeah. Well, the problem was it was so swift, and there were so many vertical rock walls. You can get pushed against them and not be able to come out, or log jams, and the water current, which has happened to me, is so stiff you can't get off of what you're being pushed off on. Mm-hmm. That didn't happen. So we get to the lake, and it was literally. I don't know if heaven's the right word, but it
was nice.
It was unbelievable, right? And there's a photo I just posted on Instagram with that thin, narrow creek going into the lake, and that's what we walked in on.
Yeah,
and that thing was like 10 feet deep. That is deeper than it was wide, and we slayed the fish. Actually, I crushed you the first day.
Yeah.
And he beat me like a rented mule on the second day.
Yeah, I'm pretty stubborn though. Like I was like, "What are you using?" He's like, I'm using a spinner. I'm like, I'm just going to use a fly and bubble, man. It's all good. And he just kept cranking them out one after another. And I caught like 3 the first day. I'm like, what the heck?
I bet I caught 30.
Panther Martin?
I was using a Pistol Pete. And that people asked about that as far as our setups. I've got a 4-piece Daiwa with a ultra lightweight reel. It holds 90 yards of 4-pound test. And that's what Amy had. And then my other one I just got, which was a Fluger. I think I had 4-pound. That'll hold 2, 4, or 6-pound tests. Ultra lightweight setups. You've got a what would you call it? A Walmart setup. But what do you got?
Mine's a Walmart pole. It's a Shakespeare. It's super cheap. But I have a decent rod or reel. It's a Abu Garcia. It was like, I don't know, $80, but
yeah, it's good.
I'm not like a crazy hardcore fisherman, so
that's the problem for me. To spend more than like $50 on a reel is difficult because I always caught fish on I had an ugly stick for like 18 years of my life. It never broke. That's all I used. And I've yarded in some big fish. So, but we were using, since we weren't fly fishing, and I mean, I got a lot of comments. Matt Davis was like, oh, I know your hand-eye coordination is better than that or something. I like to catch fish. So if catching fish means using a spinning rod, I'm not bringing a fly rod. And at this point, I don't bring a fly rod hardly ever. In these high lakes, there's so much brush in the back. You can barrel cast or roll cast. And in some cases, like with Colton's a hell of a fly fisherman. He's caught fish in areas that we weren't on a spinning rod. But either way, I was using the torpedo bobber. You were using the same type of thing. 5 feet a leader, and then I had a Pistol Pete, which is like, it was a woolly booger with a prop on the front, and I slow roll that thing like at a boring level. But we were using Panther Martins, Blue Fox spinners, Rooster tails,
Castmaster looking things.
Yep, Castmasters, and then we used a lot of bead-headed brassies, bead-headed princes, Copper Johns.
Yeah.
Normal stuff, right? And in my tackle box, I have those spinners, a bunch of different flies, and I've got 2-pound leader that I tie on the torpedo bobber. But anyway, we stayed 2 nights at that lake. Yeah. 1 night at the other lake that was frozen over, 2 nights at this lake. And the thing with this is we went to northern Colorado, to an area we'd never been. And that was the problem, is we didn't know the route, we didn't know the area, we didn't know anything. So we're guessing. We ran into some hikers that were in trouble. Like, the one guy, we're thinking it's Mike or Corey, right? So we're sitting there, we see these, and he's yelling, Mike! And what'd the guy yell?
He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm fishing. I'm like, is that you, Mike? He's like, no. A weird thing to ask somebody. Just, what are you doing?
Didn't he ask you where the trail was?
Yeah, he's like, where's the trail? And I mean, to be honest, I didn't know where it was either, because we didn't come in on the trail. So I'm like, it's back here. And then you're like, no, it's over there. I'm like, oh, well, it's over there.
Yeah. So some people came in on the other side of us to Corey, and I couldn't hear what they were talking about, but I could hear Corey say, if you go that way, it's going to suck. And I'm like, huh. And then Corey came over. He's like, I don't think those people were doing very good. Because, you take away the trail. I mean, we ran into a guy when we got out that got so screwed up, he came out on the wrong trail, like a few miles from where we were.
Quite a ways away.
And we gave him a ride to the parking lot. So anyway, but at that place, so what we ended up doing, people asked a lot about how we cook the fish, or how I've cooked the fish. There's like 2 primary methods, 3 really. You put the stick through their mouth. I sharpen it up, and I just jam it through the tail, and I cook it like a hot dog.
Like a hot dog, yeah.
I just put seasoning in there.
Especially with a small fish, you can do that.
Oh, yeah. Anything really under 14 inches, you're fine. And now, I have done it on bigger fish, but you got to have one hell of a stick is the problem.
Well, you almost have to like stick sticks through the rib cage underneath it to
open
like
it up.
2 or 3 to hold it in place so it doesn't
and I was
fall
telling
apart as it gets hot.
Amy about that, because you basically take, it's like a toothpick to open up the body cavity is what you do, and it works well enough. You're not going to do it you're not going to throw a 28-inch fish on a stick and cook it. But
I tried once, and most of it ended up in the fire. And I was fishing it out and trying to eat it with ashes all over it.
We cooked some of those lake trout, and what I did is I built this is a survival thing, but basically out of willows, big willows, this giant spatula tong thing. And I basically weave there's 2 sides to it, and I weave the willows together, and it makes a big basket.
And you like to do that, and with the green willows, they don't burn.
Yep.
They'll hold it together.
Yeah, and it'll work. But a lot of it depends. I mean, it's not like we were bushcrafting the hell out of this trip. We brought aluminum foil, right? We just ran out.
Well, that's what I was going to say is I saw the aluminum foil. That's just, is that like not one of your favorite ways to cook it?
That is my very favorite way to cook it. And I take and I get about 16 inches of aluminum foil that I pack.
And I like the heavy duty aluminum foil. If you're gonna pack that stuff, don't bring like the paper thin crap.
And Amy loved it because she's a cook. So I take the 16, multiply that by 2, and then you can fit usually 4 or 5 fish in there.
Mm-hmm.
We put olive oil or coconut oil seasoning. I fold the piece over, and then we roll each edge up, and you just throw it in the fire. And dude, that was
that was good. It's like it's almost like they're steamed.
Yeah. You can
compared to like on the fire,
right,
they're dry. They're a little bit drier. I mean, they're both for good, sure. In the foil, they're money.
Yeah, they were good. But that's what I did. And we brought. Actually, she took the Traeger grill seasoning, and she took some of that, and just mixed a bunch of different stuff together, and it works great. Now we had. I mean, when they're smaller fish, which we talked about in the other video, but when they're like brookies and they're 5 inches. I just cut the head off and cook the whole thing, cut them into chunks, and I eat the bone and all. But when you get into the bigger fish, you can't really eat the bone. You could, I guess.
Even when they're smaller, you eat the bones like we ate them last time.
Yeah.
There's still like this sort of, when you go to swallow it,
you feel it.
The body's going, wait, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And you just kind of make it go down. Yeah. And it's actually doesn't bother you at all, but there's a psychological thing.
With these fish, and Amy, I don't know who caught, as far as awards go, I think Amy had the biggest fish.
Yeah, she had a big old cut bow. That thing was just boom.
Okay, she was pumped. She was using the F word. She was pumped.
I could hear from across the lake.
Well, and she's funny because her family are deep sea fishermen, right? They all.
Yeah.
But for this, it's new for her, and she thought big lure, big fish. And I don't think she believed me because I'm yarding out this giant woolly booger, and I gave her like a 18 bead-headed brassy or something. And I'm like, no, it'll work. And then she hammered that big fish. And when I say big, what was it? Because you caught one about the same size. You're pretty close, 14, 12 inches.
14 inches or so.
But I probably caught the most. You caught the most consistent, largest. Like he caught more big fish, and then Amy probably caught the biggest. So it was a win-win for everybody, as far as everybody was successful.
Everybody got an award.
Except for Mike.
Mike brought a fly rod. I think poor bastard caught 1 4-inch fish. Yeah. I think he might have caught a couple. But Mike brought an REI quarter dome or normal tin. I've used it in the past. Corey brought the sawtooth. Problem we ran into in that area, if we would have known, it was rocky, bouldery, super bouldery. So like I had boulders holding up half of my tent shelter where the stakeout points, I had boulders on top of them. You were lucky you had that freestanding tent. He had his pretty tricked out. He had his in a spot that was like designed for a shelter because it was a vertical rock wall about 4 feet. Mm-hmm. And then his shelter was there, so it was a wind block, and he has guy outlines and boulders stacked on top of that vertical wall on one side. I got some cool photos of it.
What were you running, Frank?
Solo. Is that how you say it? Solo?
I think it's Sulo.
Hilleberg Sulo.
Hilleberg Sulo.
It's like their red label.
Yeah. Right? That's a red label. And that shelter I've had in horrible conditions. It's a little bit heavy. I change out some stuff on it. I cut some stuff off and do things that Hilleberg probably doesn't want me to do. But
I got a question for you. Now that Amy has used the sawtooth on our last trip, and this time she used the Onion GT2, what
the verdict?
Yeah, what does she think?
I mean, honestly, I think this last go around she would have probably preferred the stove, but I think like bugs, she's going to get the Hilleberg in the summer. We're gonna run an Onion, because of the bugs. She doesn't mind not having a floor, dude. And it's amazing.
What about the room inside?
Well, as I say, I'm glad you brought that up because it definitely for a new beginner, the truth comes out because they don't know, they have no bias,
right?
Climbing out of that Hilleberg compared to standing up in the sawtooth, right? Like she's got to pee in the middle of the night. She's stepping on my head, trying to get out the door. The dog's up front, right? The dog's in the vestibule, and so in that case, she's like, she likes the room of this thing, right? Of a sawtooth. She liked the floor with the snow. You can't deny the floor is nice, especially when you're just camping on 4 feet deep of snow. Setting it up. It's easier to set up that Hilleberg compared to this with SST pins. And then the rocky conditions, that were, I should have had a freestanding. I should have had a Hilleberg Stika is what I should have had. It's basically a big solo, right? It's a big 2-person tent. And that Stika is a little bit heavy, but man, when you need it, right? So in the case, if the first place we camped, she would have rather had the Hilleberg or the Kifaru just because of the stove, right? It was cold. I would have needed to have packed some extra stuff to make it work, SST pins, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
In the next place, we wouldn't have had the option. I don't think we could have got that. Corey barely got it.
Like rigged his sawtooth up just to make it fit on those rocks.
So. Now, having said all of that, if I was to go back and do it by myself, I would have either had the solo or just a flat tarp. Honestly, a flat tarp for that trip, with as long as you're aware, you know what I mean. You got Tyvek or whatever, just because we could have slept on dirt with a flat tarp. Yeah. We could have dead man anchors on the high end or whatever. But you also have the cold, right? You get out and, there's no that. I brought that lantern that heats up this or a Kifaru or a Hilleberg. So, I mean, I think with her it's 50-50. Basically just like I am. I think in the cold months when you can have that stove, she's going to want to run a Kifaru. And I think in the summer months with bugs, she's going to want to run the Hilleberg.
Yeah.
I would guess. Now, when we go up high, I don't think she would really give a crap because the tent thing's out. In my opinion, the tent thing or whatever, when you're up real high and the weather's nice, at that point it's a shade issue. Mm-hmm. And getting in any shelter, 3-season or not, sucks when the sun's out in the middle of the day. It's just hot.
Yeah.
Where you get that air flowing through. So
that's where I liked my tarp.
Yeah.
You pitch it up and you can
off the ground.
The wind's just blowing through it. It's nice and cool but shaded.
Yep. No, it's nice. We had one of the things, and we've talked about it a ton. One of the things people asked about was the lantern. That's the Primus Micron lantern. It's the same one I've always used. For water purification, I had pills. I had MSR Aqua Tabs. You had Aquamira. And then we had the Sterapin, standard stuff we always use. Yep. And then clothing-wise, I think I had as many questions about what Amy wore. It's me, right? I mean, I don't know. But Amy wore that top
Fanatic.
You have right there, Fanatic
hoodie by Sitka.
She brought the Fanatic hoodie, and then she had the and it's the lightweight Core Crew, the one that I talked about, shiny. And then she wore Timberline pants on the trip before, but on this pants she had on
with Piranha.
They're Piranha, but it's the chick version of the Zion. She had those, and then she had the Kelvin puffy over that, and she was good. I mean, she had the Timberline jacket, but she didn't use it that much. It didn't rain that much or whatever. It did rain quite a bit, I guess, on Friday, but not a whole lot. And for me, I had basically the same system. I had the Core medium weight in the middle, and then I had the Fanatic, and I had it in like the whitetail pattern. And then for pants, I actually wore cool Renegades on the way in, and I had, as horrible as this sounds, I didn't want to wear the Ascent pants because that's the only set I got, and I didn't want to get them dirty. And it turns out that was a good idea because there was fish guts and crap all over my pant legs. And then I had a lightweight down puffy, and I just wear that same Jetstream beanie for pretty much everything to bed. That's one thing people asked about too, like on this trip, because the cold weather, they saw the front of that. Do I pull my sleeping bag completely closed, like to where it's just a little hole where you look like Kenny on South Park? I don't. I wear a beanie hat and I pull it around my neck. I actually wedge stuff up high under my head and make the head portion into a pillow. But do you do that, or do you pull it all the way around?
Nah, I usually wear a balaclava thing, and then I'll just put it under my nose and wear my beanie real low, and that's good. I don't. I think when you
that's so
over-tighten the it's kind of gangster. No. When you over-tighten the sleeping bag, don't you get a bunch of condensation? I feel like I get a bunch of condensation right by the face part.
Amy pulls hers all the way around, and she had like frost all over because it got well below freezing. All frost all around hers. But either way,
I like to, take my stuff sack and throw my puffy in there, or a couple other bits of soft material that I use for my pillow. And I never zip my head up inside the sleeping bag.
Yeah, I never do. Well, it's got to be super cold for me to do.
Yeah, I'll throw a beanie on my head, and then I just kind of sleep with my whole face exposed. And if it gets super cold, then I might tuck in, but it's got to be real cold. I like, at first, the first night or two, like my face will be cold.
Yeah.
But after a while, it's like when you come back from a trip like this and you walk inside the house, my face is so used to being cold and having the wind on it. I walk in the house and I feel like it's on fire.
Oh, yeah.
Your skin adjusts.
I take Benadryl before I sleep, or I used to take Advil PM, but I take a couple Benadryls now. As you know, I don't sleep anyway that well. Yeah. But I will say sleeping in that, because you are kind of crunched in that shelter and that onion, it is nice because I can't go anywhere. So I actually took my food bag, my Possibles pouch, then I laid the Fanatic hoodie over that, and then I put my puffy over that, and I had like a ramp for my head, and I always sleep better that way. Yeah. And the Benadryl, I'm sure, helped. Now you're in basically a coffin, right? That Solo, as much as I tell people,
might as well be a bivvy. Yeah, but you can sit up in it.
That wide, but it's tall. And the way that I like that. So the reason I like that Solo so much is I can get my clothing, primary camera gear inside the main compartment. There's enough room by my head, and then my pack goes in the vestibule. Again, whatever. I can basically get on my knees, open the vestibule, and piss without getting out of the tent. Did you do that, or did you get out?
No. I learned my lesson in Idaho.
Oh, yeah. Should we bring that up? So it turns out Jordan Cower does not like you peeing where you're going to walk. He got all pissed off at Frank because Frank's not a good listener.
Frank, that's disgusting.
I just don't listen, I guess. One of the first nights we got there, I didn't know. He never mentioned anything. I was peeing by the truck when we parked. And he was like, well, he cussed a lot. He was like, don't piss right there, man. I'm going to walk in that. And I was like, and I went to the other guy. I was like, what's up with Jordan and peeing near the truck? He's like, I don't know, man. He's kind of anal about it.
I'm just.
There was another night where before we were going to bed, I was peeing kind of around camp, and he was like, "Are you standing there? Or are you taking a piss?" I'm like, "Well, I was trying to piss, but now you're yelling at me." So now I've been making fun of Jordan for like the past week or two about peeing everywhere. I guess he'd walked in some pee or somebody peed on him.
Jesse's dog peed on that dude's arrows yesterday in the arrow stand at Bear Creek. That was a little embarrassing. I take my shirt and wipe the pee off his arrows. But I mean, that is one thing nice with that Solo is you kind of waddle over, just get up to your knees and kind of go a foot out and just pee and get back in, which is a huge thing for me because, I mean, I know people that will hold their pee for 4 hours because they don't want to get out of that warm bag. I won't be sleeping because they got to pee. They just don't want to get out.
Yeah, I'm not that guy.
Yeah, I got to go. When I got to go, I get up and go.
Patrick just rolls over and
he'll pee by your head.
I've just been peeing in the floorless like all season long.
It's amazing how many comments I got about this subject. The Democrat-Republic comment is true. Like, guys are like, pee in a Ziploc and just set it outside.
Like, there were a ton of guys who wrote in on the podcast last week. We good, Dwayne? We got to wait a sec.
Let's wait a sec because I need to pee.
Peeing inside the shelter we got a lot of guys who wrote in that were like, dude, you need a gallon freezer Ziploc.
Yeah.
And you just pee in that and then
close
dump it out
the next day
and set it outside your sleeping bag or in the vestibule. And he's like, and then you dump it out the next day. And there's a bunch of guys who wrote in and said that.
Yeah.
For me, I suppose that could work. I don't want to be peeing
in a bag.
I don't want to be like getting it inside my bag.
Yeah, I
like,
was say, no matter who you are, the
delicate
last drop is
procedure
going to hit somewhere that you're going to be sleeping in, whether it's your drawers or your bag.
When you do the center zip on the Kifaru sleeping bag and then you lean out and you do a little hip thrust, you just pull up on the Tyvek a little.
Drape your hang down out a little.
Dude, and I mean, not everybody can do that because they're not as
right
built.
If you're cold, right? If you're cold, you may pee on your bag.
You might need a funnel.
But a couple times I did that, and I was like last year in the Tut here, and I was like, man, my eyes are burning. Like I didn't drink enough water, and then Aron would do it like an hour later, and I'd be like, it'd be early in the morning. I'm like, whoo, it's a little pungent.
But, when you pee in the morning, you're dehydrated and you drink coffee?
After a hard day of hiking and everything and
stuff. It reminds me of that movie Ghost Rider where he's pissing fire. Every time I pee and it smells that bad, I'm like, holy cow, I got the Ghost Rider effect.
Yeah. But
hopefully it doesn't
like
burn
within a couple of minutes, it's gone. You know, the smell's gone. And but I just don't find it like, you know, you're just camped there for, you know,
a day or
a couple
two,
days, and then you're moving on. And I just don't. But man, it's a game changer to me. Like I slept so much better last season having a floorless and just being able to take a leak, go to sleep.
Yeah. When you hold your pee when you're trying to sleep, it can make you cold because your body's trying to keep that pee warm.
That's correct. Yeah. And that's another thing too, to stay as warm as you can, which is where temperature ratings on sleeping bags, the more dehydrated you are, the colder you'll be, specifically your feet. And so if you're super dehydrated, which you hydrate yourself for the night's sleep, and you got to pee, you got warm feet, but you got to pee, so you're getting up anyway. But that was another thing. Guys asked at what bags we had brought, and we brought Kifaru bags. We both had 20 degree
slick bags.
Yeah, the slick bag, Kifaru slick, regular length, wide. You had a wide?
I use wide.
Wide. Now you used a quilt quite a bit too.
Yeah.
Well, you had
I had E&E, Enlightened Equipment.
Enlightened Equipment.
Yeah.
And how's a quilt different from a whoopie?
It's pretty. I would say it's about the same. I think the whoopies are a little bit smaller. I had a long, wide E&E just because I like to wrap up in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just say there's some clip. The way it clips around your bag or your pad is different. Where ours is just like a survival blanket, a whoopie basically. The one you had will buckle around the.
And it had like a zip up or a button up foot box too.
Yeah, yours did. Yeah. Some do and some don't on the quilts. I'm not a fan of quilts, but I did get quite a few questions from guys from the snow photos and everything that were going in Arctic temperatures. And I gotta, be honest with guys. I hate quilts. I'll just be honest about that. But when it gets to super cold weather, a lot of ways you're better running down if size is an issue. Now, durability wise, synthetic's going to be more durable and you can get it wet. But if you're talking running negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit, 0, negative 5, 10, plus, negative 40, a down bag is going to compress more and be lighter weight than a negative 20, synthetic bag. And so that's the thing. If you're packing it in, you're going to have some issues, potentially or whatever. Trying to, you're going to take up half of a freaking backpack with a negative 20 bag. But I think I've covered pretty much the big questions. But when we came out, we had the big decision, which was a group effort of Frank, myself.
Did you have a committee meeting?
What's that?
Did you have a committee meeting?
We had a committee meeting of do we take the trail out and around or do we shoot straight down? Did everybody agree on that?
I think we all agreed, yeah.
I was throwing a sales pitch on straight down.
I knew what the trail was like.
Adventure!
Dude, it would have been an adventure going out on the trail. I'm not going to lie, it was laziness because it was, there was a lot of ups and downs and a lot of snow in the creek crossings where we had one, one major.
Just the one big one.
Yeah, one major creek crossing. And then I just, I tried to stay ahead just because in case we got cliffed out, I would have felt bad for Amy because, like I said, you're going straight varsity. We're going down, I'd say that was probably a 37 to 45 degree slope in that one.
Steep, yeah.
Steep as you could get. And cliffs, big vertical rock cliffs where you had to kind of skirt the edge of one and go around deadfall. And I would say that was probably out of a difficulty level as far as what it could have been. That was relatively easy.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
Didn't hit any major deadfall, didn't hit any major cliffs. We had a couple boulder fields, but overall, we nabbed our way down and came right out. For whatever reason, guys always ask me what my favorite, piece of gear was for this specific trip, which is hard for me to pick out. A lot of guys asked about the knives because we're using, would you use this, that, or whatever knife. But honestly, what made this trip was the Pistol Pete. If I wouldn't have had that piece of fishing tackle, dude, I crushed it on Saturday or Friday. Dude, I was yarding in. Amy was laughing because you had caught 3 fish, and I think I caught 20.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
Every cast, it was just – and, dude, I hooked that Pistol Pete up on a log, and I'm yanking on it to try and get it off, and that bobber shot back. Dude, it hit me so freaking hard right here in the stomach. There's a bruise. Dude, it doubled me over, and Amy, she was right behind me, and when it hit, it made this kind of like the sound of a Omer edge opening up, right? It was just crazy whack, and I was like, oh, whew. She's like, what? And I'm like, oh, the bobber hit me. She's like, did you not open the bail thing? And I'm like, no, because it's slung back or whatever. But then that was the only pistol Pete. I lost the next. I had one pistol Pete. I had the next one, which was a Renegade Pete, and I lost that on a fish like 3 casts into it. But we're running.
Were you using 6X?
7X. So
is that even that's less than 6 then, I guess?
5X is 3. I think 7X is 2.
So this mountain lake, you had more than brook trout in there.
Cut bows, brookies, and
just regular cutthroats.
And regular cutthroats, yeah. Cut bows like a half cutthroat, half rainbow.
Very cool.
Yeah, they were cool looking fish. I got a ton of photos. I brought that Azulu, Essie Azulu, and then the Taito knife, and they've asked for some photos in the spirit of full candor or whatever. So I'm packing them both either way, but I've been taking a bunch of photos just because they wanted some pretty cool, photos.
You need some for
just for marketing stuff.
Materials.
And, I mean, to be honest, that system, and when I say to be honest, no bullshit honest, like that system is probably the best I've found for a dual knife lightweight system. I just ordered one for Frank. I keep calling it Taito. It's actually Tito, but it's been pretty solid because you got the camp knife or whatever else, and then we were whittling sticks up a storm, and that it's not like you can't whittle a stick with a Taito, interchangeable blade knife, but it is nicer having that Azula. But I was talking to Essie, Shane had suggested a couple other ones for me to try, so I actually ordered one yesterday for this trip. And then I gotta say, it's rough of a time we had his boots to get to fit me. That Brickstall, or however you pronounce them, I will say they've been money. I wore them the entire trip from Crispy, yeah. Frank, you wore Salewa. So Frank's a Salewa guy. Yeah. Although I'm going to get him a set of Crispies to try out, but those Brickstalls were money. They didn't leak. Right stiffness.
You've been using them a month now?
Yeah, more than that probably. This is the first trip where
you really tested them.
Yeah, well, tested them in the sense of a lot of water and snow. So I would say that's the thing I was most happy about, that they didn't leak. I knew they fit because I've been wearing them enough hiking around, but they didn't leak. And that Pistol Pete, if I had to pick one thing, that's probably the most important thing in my arsenal for this weekend. But what's a big one for you? I don't think people know as much. You're in the woods every bit as much as I am because I drag your ass with me, and then you hunt a lot.
I'm a huge fan of our parka. I take that thing year round. So,
I noticed you were in those photographs.
I always wear that.
Me too.
And people are kind of surprised. They're like, you take this jacket with you in the summer, bow hunting, springtime fishing trips, coyote hunting. I take it always. And it's not down like he was saying compressible as far as like down it would be, but synthetic it still compresses down pretty well for what it is, and it's super warm. So.
I haven't got my hands on the Sitka Kelvin jacket yet. The active, they're puffy layers. Still, I'll get my hands on that and test it pretty soon. But the Kifaru Lost Park parka is like, I live in that. I took it everywhere last year. I put it in the guide lid. It's always on top. I think yank it out when I get cold. Put it back in when I'm hiking.
I think the best description for it's like you're wearing a sleeping bag.
That's what I tell people too.
That warm.
Plus, it can get wet. You can beat the hell out of it, scratch it, all that, and it just seems to just be tough.
Well, and I think the Kelvin Active and that Kifaru Puffy are literally it's a Daewoo compared to a Ford F-150. A Daewoo is not a right terminology. That Kelvin Active's lightweight, dries super fast. It's not as insulating. It's built for moving, right? In my opinion, it's built for a guy on the move that needs to stay warm, needs to dry out fast. That Kifaru Parker is built for not dying, right? That jacket is built for you to stay alive in any condition, basically. And I'm not throwing a sales pitch for either one, or I'm throwing a sales pitch for both of them, because honestly, in late season hunts, I'll be wearing that Kelvin Active jacket under the Kifaru Parka because it's that cold. I can pull the Kifaru Parka off and I'll move with the Kelvin Active, and they'll both dry out. And that's the thing with synthetic that's so nice. I don't give a shit what anybody says. It pissed rain Friday, right? Yep. I didn't care. He didn't either. He had the Kifaru Parka. I had the Kelvin Active. I just sat there and let it rain. It doesn't matter to me. It's going to dry out. Where you compare that to down,
your host.
Yeah, you're going to be worried because when I say pissed rain, It rained off and on for 6 hours? Probably?
Oh, geez. Yeah, it seemed like all day, but
Kind of like when we were with Caitlin.
No, quite a bit worse than that.
Really?
And we were higher too. It would literally, it rained enough and lightning came over. We had to go get in the tents just to get out of the rain. It wasn't something you could stay out in all the time. But when we cleaned the fish, it was piss and rain, and
So I think. Sorry. I was just going to say, circling back to the quilt versus slick bag. I think that's kind of the reason why I switched over to the slick bag is because. You can get it wet compared to the to the down. I went on a scouting trip with Dan and my buddy Clinton, and it was coming down raining, and we were all jammed up into a mega tarp. 3 of us. It was kind of gay, but my quilt got wet, and I was
The
just
G
thinking,
word, really?
Sorry. Anyway. Well, anyway, so the quilt got wet, and I was just thinking, like, if this was hunting season, this could have ended my season. So that's like that week I came back and asked you if I could get a slick bag. Which I did. So.
Well, I don't think people realize. I mean, people have seen like the deer you shot last year and the year before. That's so Frank. Give you an idea. Frank's a sleeper. That's 9 miles in.
Yeah, 9 miles.
Yeah, 9 miles in just to start hunting, and you did that solo for.
I killed my deer on the 8th day and hiked out on the 9th day.
Yeah, on the that's solo, and I mean, people can say what they want. I don't know many people that stay 8-9 days solo. They don't. I mean, people say they do, and they
We're
lie.
9 miles in.
Yeah, 9 miles in. And then the one year you hiked, let me just give you an idea of some of the things that TortLife has done. You had to hike in on a Friday, kill the deer, and come back and be back to work on a Monday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then last year you drove all the way down, and I will say this is semi-par for the course. Frank forgot all his clothing. 6 hours.
Yeah, I got there. 6-hour drive, got down there, got out of the truck. I saw an elk up on the hill. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I'm going to put my clothes on now. Look for my clothes. I had the Delorme Messenger, and I texted him. I'm like, dude, I forgot all my clothes.
What did I say back?
You probably said something like, you flipping idiot. Or something like that.
Yeah, probably something like that.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Well, and then so I give you a subject of what we were talking about, but talk about Frank. So I was in Washington on a goat hunt, and you shot a cow, and you texted me and you said, because I told him where to go, not where to go, but I said, yeah, dude, go ahead in there, whatever. Because that was by place I hunted, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, like I shot a cow, but you hit it far back, didn't you?
It was kind of an angle, and I kind of got like one lung. But it felt good about it. I thought it was going to be dead down the trail.
Yeah. And anyway, but you killed that cow, and then you're a predator hunting machine.
Yeah. That's probably, I tell people all the time, that's probably my favorite thing to do is kill coyotes. And I don't know if he doesn't understand it. He's like, why the F do you go out and do that? It's cold and all that. But I don't know. I think it's just exciting. And
Well, it was negative 37 last year. They were trying to talk me to going out.
We did go out one night or one day, and it was super cold, and we had whoobies, and we were wrapped up and stuff. We called in one coyote, and Colton freaking missed it, but that was probably the worst trip I'd been on. But it's exciting. I mean, usually
I had a question. Going back to the, the insulation, the synthetic, and all that. Can you explain why, sometimes people think more layers, the warmer they'll be.
Okay.
So they just layer. They crawl in their sleeping bag, and they've got like 3 down jackets on and their sleeping bag, and they're freezing all night. Yeah. What's that about?
Yeah. So, and I'm assuming we recorded that part, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're on, right, Dwayne?
Okay.
Yeah, because Caitlin crawled in her bag, and I'm like, Caitlin, you got to take some layers off. You're not. She's like, I'm cold. I'm like, you're gonna stay cold.
So I mean, and I'll just break this down first. There's an acronym that they use in the military: COLD, cleanliness, overheating, looseness, and layers, and staying dry. Okay, so those are you want to stay clean. You don't want to overheat. This is for walking around. Mm-hmm. You want to have layers, and you want them to be loose, and then you want to stay dry. Now that's just for walking around. The one thing in a sleeping bag, I mean, more and more layers, I mean, it certainly won't, I guess it probably won't hurt anything. But the big thing is if you get in the bag cold and your body is not generating heat, it doesn't matter if you have 40 layers. You're not generating any, I mean, I guess it matters, but if you're not generating heat, you're not encapsulating, there's no heating source inside of layers. So adding one layer after another, it's not like there's a heater in those. The heater comes from your body. And so there's a certain point where there's a diminishing return, right? You're only holding in whatever's already in there, if that makes any sense. And so when you go to sleep, sleeping in a puffy jacket isn't a good thing, and it's not a bad thing. It's just a thing that, like, you've had to do it, and I've had to. Yeah, I think you slept in yours the other day, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I do something.
Yeah, sometimes if it's super cold. But all you're doing is basically adding a secondary layer inside of your sleeping bag, and that just helps trap the heat that your body is generating inside. It does you no good to strap on all of those layers. A lot of people used to say sleeping naked was, take it out easy. Everybody, Aron is walking out the fastest man alive.
Tall Aron.
That's tall. That's cardio Aron. He's the guy that crushes us all. I hope you break a leg. Just kidding. He's super fast. But people used to say sleeping naked. Mm-hmm. Your sleeping bag will heat up the fastest by sleeping naked. The idea being that your body's heat that it's producing is getting trapped right there, where if you had colder clothing on, whatever the case may be, it's that clothing is a barrier now. It's really
it's just like the heat from your arm is insulated against the heat from your core and so on, right? Because you got all these layers on.
And if you're cold and this layer's cold, it's having to transfer cold air to something cold to, it's not trapping anything in. I'm not doing the greatest job of explaining this, but if you were able to run around the tent buck naked 40 times and dive in your bag, then yes, your bag is going to heat up quicker. But if you are averagely, just producing some body heat and you have...
If you feel like your temperature's already dropped and you're already really cold, climbing inside your sleeping bag with a million layers will just insulate that, keep that coldness in place.
Yep, it's no different putting an icicle inside of a sleeping bag.
Or ice cream.
It's insulating cold.
Inside a sleeping bag, it'll stay that way for a while. It'll insulate. Whatever's in there, if it's heat, it'll keep the heat in.
Yep.
If it's cold, it'll keep the cold in.
And I'm sure there's going to be a ton of guys that'll have great info that'll chime in on this on YouTube and all the normal places. But the idea being that I want to get across here is if you get into a bag, let's say you get into the best down or synthetic bag on the market, and you get in that, you stand outside, you're not by a fire, you're BSing, you're messing with your gear, you let your core body temperature drop, your feet get cold, and you get into your sleeping bag, there's going to be a problem, right? Your body's not producing enough heat.
Be cold all night.
Yeah, you're going to be cold all night. Now, if you're a warm-bodied person, you're going to probably be okay because you're going to... I sleep cold.
Or I'll be freezing cold, and I'll climb inside my bag, and I'll curl up in the fetal position, and then I'll almost jog in place.
I do plyometrics. I think I flex my muscles like this a bunch, and I've done...
And I'll just keep shaking and wiggling.
And what I had... that's funny. That'll warm you up. That's what I had... that's what I had Amy do. Her feet were cold, but her body's always... She produced a lot of heat. I had her put her Kelvin jacket around her feet. Mm-hmm. And I said, just rub them together like crazy.
Right.
And what I was explaining to her is the secondary source. An extra layer is not horrible, but having 15 doesn't matter. And I said, so one, it'll help keep the heat inside. So let's say if she ends up pushing against, in the middle of the night, you push against the insulation down or synthetic at the end of your bag, that can be a problem. That puffy jacket around your feet helps that. It's a secondary barrier because my feet get cold. And what I'll do is I'll buy that lantern. I'll put my feet right by the lantern, and I rub them together, and I have serious problems with my feet. I'll warm them up, and I'll put my feet, wrap them around my jacket, and get them down there. Another thing I'll do is I'll knock out, literally till I hit muscle failure, 80 push-ups before I go to bed. If I'm cold, to get my core body temperature warmed up, and I just pull myself in the bag, usually with just a base layer on, because now my body, the heat it's producing is getting trapped inside that bag. That's going to warm you up more than, let me throw 6 layers on and a down jacket.
And not move and sit still.
Yeah, and sit still.
I've never been colder than in a tree stand in my life. It's like the sitting there and not moving has such an impact on your core body temperature.
Right. Now if you're going to, I've been stuttering more lately. I sound like an idiot. If you're going to, in a survival situation or whatever, the best thing you can do, in my opinion, and what has worked well for me, if I'm getting ready to get into my sleeping bag and I am getting cold, right? Or my core's dropped and I've had to sit in one spot. I'll get into, I'll have enough layers on my body to keep me warmed up. I'll hike around, do whatever I need to do. And the moment I stop, because I don't want to sweat, the moment I stop, I'll throw on more layers, a puffy jacket or whatever. I'll get inside my tent because I got to get my things ready or whatever else. I'm going to drop a few layers and hop in my bag, and I've kept my core temperature pretty warm. As far as just in general, the big thing I would say is you want to do is if you can warm your bag up ahead of time, boil water, put
our meal in there.
Yeah, a meal. Get that thing warmed up, but your body is the thing. You need that to be warm, producing heat. That is a most important thing, more important than anything else, before you get in your bag. Now, you've been in some hairy, wet, horrible situations where heat camps on this mule deer hunt is relentless. What do you do anything? Because I know you basically, you're at average, I would say average sense of producing body heat. I'm on the far end of the spectrum. I'm freezing I'm always cold.
Yeah. I mean, I generally notice my feet get cold if I'm just laying on my back, and like you're saying, when your feet rub up against the bottom of the bag, it kind of compresses your insulation. So if that happens, I'll kind of get in a little bit of a ball and then kind of just rub my feet together or go down and rub my feet, and then I seem to be fine. But I usually get too cold, and I mean almost year round I use that 20-degree bag, so I feel like I almost sleep hot for the most part.
That's where some hot chocolate or hot tea is big too. Like you drink something like that and it just warms you up inside, and then
and I think that if you and people understand this, if you get stuck in 4-wheel drive, are you going to 6? There is no 6-wheel drive. You're stuck, right? If you get in your bag with every bit of layer you have on, and then you get out of your bag, what are you going to do? Make more layers? You got everything on you, and you're screwed. Now, if it's a survival situation, it's one thing. But I sleep, like this weekend, I slept in that like core midweight deal, but just a fleece, right?
Yeah.
And as soon as I got out, I put my next layer on, and I put my puffy jacket on because my body heat from what has generated overnight in my bag is now transferring to these new layers, holding the heat inside. The puffy jacket's insulating that heat. If it's super windy or whatever, I'll put a rain jacket over it. But the thing is keeping your body core temperature up as much as you can and regulated. You don't want it to be spiked from one end of the spectrum to the other all the time. Like when we get to camp, one of the main things I encourage people to do, and what I've been teaching to Amy, is pull your wet as soon as you're done screwing around and you've stopped moving, pull that shirt off. If it's dry enough, hang it in a tree, get your dry shirt on, and put your layers on to hold that body heat in that you've produced. If you just keep what you have on, you're losing all that body heat and your core temperature's dropping, and then you get to a point where you're kind of screwed. There's a couple times where we've stopped because you're about as cold as I am. And you're too stupid or hard-headed or whatever, you got too much stuff going on, and if you just have like a hoodie on, your core, you're going to get to a point where you're so cold, putting layers on isn't going to matter. You got to move, and that's the most important thing. So. That
one time we were hunting last year, it was a cold morning, and not just cold, it was wet, like just the dampness in the air.
In Idaho?
No, in Colorado. And Aron and
this is when I should have spoke up earlier.
We were sitting on a field where we knew the elk were coming in, and we were waiting. And Aron's got the stick bow, and
where we hung cold tree stand.
Yeah, he's ready to kill this sucker. And anyway, he just kept waiting and waiting and waiting, and his feet were wet because he had those prototypes from Crispy, and they weren't quite, fully made up, and they were wet. And so you got the feet wet, plus it's freezing cold.
Literally freezing.
And it just was way colder than any previous day. Mm-hmm. Aron's temperature dropped to a point where it was dangerously low,
I could not stop shaking.
And
so I don't mean like you get the shivers. I was shaking so uncontrollably my jaw hurt because I couldn't.
So then we're like, okay, let's go back to camp. And he's like, I need to get back to camp. And I'm like, or we could hike this hill and go hunt over there. And Aron's like, you and we're not on the same wavelength here.
I should have complained. I didn't.
He never said a word.
I didn't say anything.
He just like toughened it out, And I was comfortable because I was wearing.
Did it get better when you hiked up the hill?
I was warm.
Just your feet probably stayed
It
cold.
literally, my feet didn't get right for hours. Like,
So I was gonna say is we basically went back to camp. He built a fire. It took almost the whole day for Aron to get his strength back.
Yeah.
it literally, because we sat there for probably 3-4 hours,
Mm-hmm.
it got to the point, and I've pushed myself this hard, and it's stupid. It got to the point to where my motor skills were having trouble. Like I wasn't functioning. I had trouble zipping up my backpack. Like it just wasn't functioning correctly. And it's stupid to get that. I mean, what you do to kill an animal, right? Like I can't go buy a steak, right? But I mean, it got, I should have said something earlier, but I knew where I was at, and he was fine, and so he's like, hey, whatever, and I knew I needed to walk, and I needed to build a fire,
Mm-hmm.
and I got pissed, not yelling at him, but I was like, you don't effing understand. I got to move, and I got to do it now. We got to get back to camp. We could have built a fire up there, but we didn't blow out the hill.
The thing is, though, is that stuff, dehydration is similar, I think, where you can just not drink water on a normal day and then find yourself like really, really far gone, even though you're a strong, healthy, fit, capable person.
Yeah.
It just takes a little bit of certain things that can really, really hurt you. And
almost toughness actually was my enemy there because I wasn't so hard-headed.
Oh, yeah.
I would have been fine. But I was too stupid, and I kept staying there, and I about got myself in trouble.
And I've seen Anthony do that twice to where we had to rush him to the hospital because he was dehydrated. And that dude is like hard as woodpecker lips, I mean, no stop, no give up, no quit. And that can actually hurt a guy that's that hard-headed sometimes. But again, maintaining that temperature, there's lots of things you can do, but it's better to head that stuff off before it gets to a point where there can be a problem. And
I literally was like this when we were standing there. I was like, and my body started to hurt in spots from shaking,
flexing,
right?
Yeah.
Well, he turned so pale, and I was like,
I think it took
let's
about
walk back to camp.
10 years off my life. My skin didn't look right for a while. And it wasn't that cold, right? It wasn't. It wasn't, I mean, we didn't sit that long. I would say it was 30, maybe, right around freezing. There was frost, I guess.
It was below freezing.
Yeah. And
27.
But the problem, my boots were soaked and my socks were soaked. I put those on.
And the thing I've learned, too, is 27 degrees when it's dry is a different ballgame than 27 degrees when you can see mist floating through the air, and that's what we were in. It was just like wet. It went through all your layers. Yeah. It's like Oregon humidity cold. Yeah. It's way colder there than it is when you're in Alberta cold.
Oh, yeah.
And it's interesting for me with having Amy not had backpacked much. She picks things up quick, but she's intelligent in the sense she's how would you describe Amy? She's a very strong-willed woman. Yeah, she's very strong. But she picks things up, so you could tell like immediately she's got her clothing system down, and But then there's other things too, like she's just learning, and it's cool for me because I'm watching her, learn or whatever, which is kind of nice. But yeah, either way, it was a good trip. We're heading back out. This trip, though, could end up to be real bad because it's 11 miles in, and we don't know if the lake's frozen or not.
Yeah.
So that might suck.
It'll be fun, though.
Are you coming?
I probably. There's a lot. Dude, I have a lot of obligations I got to hammer out because we're going to be gone again for like the next few weekends. So
yeah, it'll be busy. So
yeah.
But either way, that was the
trip.
The trip with several squirrels in the middle, and your introduction to Frank the Tank, TortLife, Peralta.
That's right.
Check him out. TortLife. What is your handle on Instagram?
TORT_life_, I think.
Tort_life. Yeah.
Two underscores.
So I should tell that story real quick. Just quick. We were at an archery tournament, and I told Frank to bring food, and at this tournament, you brought Spam and tortillas.
And tortillas, yeah.
And
just
all the white dudes didn't have any food. And so they were stealing his tortillas. And was it Cody
Covey, yeah.
Was eating his tortilla and said, "Living the Tort life." And that's where that came from, right? Yeah. So Frank's had TortLife photography, TortLife archery, TortLife deer hunting, because I got a text, TortLife deer hunting is off to a shaky start when he forgot his camo, his clothing. Anyway, that's how he got the name TortLife.
I will say, though, on that text subject, that staying out that long of a time, that Delorme thing was kind of like, it was helpful having that, because you don't talk to people for 8 days and you'll send somebody a text when you're bored, and I think that was something that helped me stay out
longer.
I would get a message from that says, nothing today, tomorrow I'm just going to have to effing give her.
We're going to have to get you back on with Dwayne. And,
I think we should,
the four of us hammer out another episode on
working with the Bowmen, working with the Gritty Bowmen.
Yeah. Kifaru.
Some funny stories, some funny show stories.
Yes, there's several.
Yeah. Get this man a sandwich.
That was a bad one. That was really bad. Yeah, Frank has to deal. I mean, you're very, very calm, right? You don't hardly ever. You wouldn't say shit if your mouth was full of it. And me, I talk too much. But he handles everything at Kifaru on pro staff orders, things like that. So he has to go to shows too. And we were at a show, and I was very, very hungry and tired of dealing with people. And this lady was very nice and let us out the door. We weren't supposed to go out. And she said, hey, make sure and shut the door behind you. And again, Frank is not a great listener. Neither was Dave. And they did not shut the door. And I lost my shit. I turned around. I'm like, what the? And I'm screaming at Frank. And Frank starts yelling, someone get this man a sandwich. Stat. And, that was at the
thing is
have you witnessed the hanger?
I've been with Aron at trade shows and stuff, and he's pretty solid until about 2:33, and then every hour it approaches 5-6, it gets downhill fast.
Yeah.
He's done.
Yeah, I want to say
at
that
5 he's done, and if you don't quit, someone might get hurt.
Yeah, that same day right before we left, you went to give Casey or Jordan a high five, so they put their hand up and he just rocks him right at the stomach. It wasn't soft. It was like full force. Casey's just.
That was like.
I'm like,
speed.
wow. I'm gonna stay away from Aron until he gets some
food. Tanya makes fun of me and Ryan because we got to the restaurant the one time, and I said, well, they're going to spiel. I'm like, what do you have? You can get me right now. And the lady was like, whatever. And I said, no. What do you have right now? Right now, you can bring to the table right now that I can eat this second. And I never heard the end of that from Tanya because he wasn't getting it. I'm like, I hadn't eaten in like 9 hours. And I mean, for me, dude, as much as I eat normally, like Amy's astonished because I eat healthy, but I eat.
Right, you eat frequently.
I eat every hour.
Yeah.
And this dude's like, oh, we can make you some Brussels sprouts. And I'm like, food. And anyway, so I do get hangry.
Well, thanks for coming on the podcast, Frank.
No problem.
And we got some more we'll hit up here soon. So everybody listening, thanks for watching, listening. Stay gritty.
Stay gritty.